All right, so this is chapter 2, lesson 2, percent and estimation. Okay, so let's take a look at some definitions over here. It says, sometimes an exact answer is not needed when using percents. One way to blank the percent of a number is to use a fraction. Okay, so in that blank, you're going to write estimate. Okay. Another method for estimating the percent of a number is first to find 10% of the number and then multiply. So, example, we know that 70% equals 7 times 10%, right? So, 70% equals 7 times 10% of a number. All right. On the other side, you can also estimate percents of a number when the percent is blank than 100 or less than 1. In that blank, you're going to write greater. So you can estimate percents of numbers when they are greater than 100 or less than 1. You can also find 10% of the number and then multiply. So 120% equals 12 times 10%. So 120% equals 12 times 10% of a number. All right, so let's look at an example. So the first example I have is Jody has paid 62% of the $500 she owes for her loan. Estimate 62% of 500, okay? Well, 62% is pretty close to 60%, right? So 60% of 500, I can change 60% to a decimal, or a fraction, which is 3/5. 3/5 times 500 is approximately 300. That's what the wavy lines mean. So anytime you see those, it's an approximation. It's about that amount. It's not the exact amount. It's about that amount, okay? So 62% of 500 is about 300. All right, let's look at the example on the left. It says, Marita and 4 of her friends ordered a pizza that cost $14.72. She is responsible for 20% of the bill. About how much money will she need to pay? Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to find 10% of $15 because I can round $14.72 up to $15, right? So 10% of 15 is 0.1 times 15, which is $1.50, okay? So the next thing I want to do is I want to multiply. We said we needed to find 20%, right? So 20%, I multiply the $1.50 times 2. 20% of $15 is 2 times 10%. So 2 times $1.50 is $3. So Marita should pay about $3. All right? The next example I have over here says, there are 789 7th grade students at Washington Middle High School. Okay, about 1/4% of the 7th grade students have traveled overseas. So 1/4%, a quarter of 1% have traveled overseas. What is the approximate number of 7th grade students that have traveled overseas? Explain your answer. Okay. Well, 1/4% is 1/4 of 1%, right? So 789 is about 800. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take 1% of 800. Well, 1% is 0.01, and I multiply that times 800. So 0.01 times 800 equals 8. Okay, and it's 1/4 of 1%, right? So I want to take 1/4 of 8, so 1/4 times 8, which gives me 2. So 1/4 of 8, 1/4 times 8, that gives me 2. So about 2 7th grade students have traveled overseas at Washington Middle School. Okay, so I have 2 try it problems at the bottom of the page. I want you to go ahead, pause the video, try out the try it problems, okay? And when you come back, we will go over the answers together. All right, so the first try it problem says Dante plans to put 80% of his paycheck into a savings account and spend the other 20%. His paycheck this week was $295. About how much money will he put into his savings account? Okay, so I'm looking for 80% of 295, but remember I'm estimating. Okay, so let's go over here. Okay, so I can estimate 295 is approximately, right, approximately 300. It's pretty close to 300. It's not 300 exactly, but it's pretty close, right? Now I can take 10% of 300, right, which is 0.1 times 300. That equals 30. Okay. Remember we said 80% of his paycheck goes into his savings account. So I'm going to take 8 because 80% is 8 times 10%. Okay, so I'm going to take 8 times 30. That gives me 240. Okay, so he'll put approximately $240 into his savings account. All right, the second try it problem that I have states a county receives 1/4% of a sales tax. About how much money would the country or the county receive from the sale of a computer that cost $1,020? All right, so over here. Okay. So 1/4% is 1/4 of 1%. Okay, we remember that? So I can approximate it to about 1, probably make my life easier. 1,020 is approximately 1,000. Okay, so I want to take 1% of 1,000, which is 0.01 times 1,000. That equals 10. Okay. Then I want to take 1/4 of 10. Which is 2.5. I'm sorry, that's 3/4. Should all be 3. So 3/4 times 10 is 7.5. So it should be, so 3/4 of 10, which is really 3/4 times 10 equals 7.5. Okay, which means $7.50 is about how much the county makes on the computer. And that is the end of lesson 2.